Roll Tide, everybody. Good to see you guys as we talk to you here on Cover Crimson, covercrimson.com. That's Clint Lamb. I'm Mick Gillispie. We're brought to you by Pearl River Resort over in Philadelphia, Mississippi. Live show today, so that means you guys get to talk to us, get in the comment section, make your presence felt today. And we're going to talk a lot of Alabama, including the kickoff time for Alabama and Florida State. Football is near. Let's get this thing going. All right, there he is, Clint Lamb. I'm Mick Gillispie. I lost my coffee. I have no idea where I put it, and I'm just going to have to find it after the show. Getting ready to go, and I'm like, hey, where's my coffee? And then I looked around for it. I don't know. It's in a white cup.
Every time anytime, especially when it's live, like if it wasn't, it'd be fine. But
I know
we're trying to get started at a certain time. It always feels like there's that one thing you forgot to do. Mine's typically turning the overhead fan on above me just because I got a lot of screens, a lot of electronics that get hot. So it can get a little bit hot in my office. And it always feels like every other time I go to do a live show, I forget to turn on the fan. So
get it.
Going without your coffee, you're just going to have to power through, I guess. But I respect the fact that you're willing to, go in kind of not as caffeinated as you probably should be.
I know. I'd have a little more energy right now. But it is what it is in this world of football and baseball and shows. But you guys, we appreciate you guys being here. Make sure that you like and subscribe. If you're not already a subscriber, hit the bell so you know when we're live, like right now. And get in the comments section. We can't wait to hear from you guys today as we talk right here on Cover Crimson every single day. AK, roll tide to you, brother. All right, let's talk about the Bama-Florida State kickoff. I think this is a very dangerous game for Alabama. NIL era. I know Florida State wasn't that good last year. They're going to have a revamped team. They had a lot of money to spend a couple years ago, and I think Nick Saban almost alluded to it. You got to spend it in the right places. I think they're going to do a better job of that this year. We know how the season ended for Alabama. I know they want to get back out on the field and do something about it, but Tallahassee's a tough place to play, and that's where the season starts. But what time does the game start?
So it's going to be a 2:30 kickoff Central Time, so 3:30 Eastern. It's going to be airing on ABC. So you've got the 11 a.m. kickoff for the Ohio State-Texas game, which has a lot of people really upset. That's two projected top 5, top 10 teams, depending. And that Big Ten kickoff stuff. From a fan's perspective, I can't imagine all of your big games in a year. You got to wake up early. You got to go ahead and start drinking at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning because the game's going to be early. I like it from a coverage standpoint sometimes because you can kind of knock it out, and then when there's some other big games, you can watch them. I think 2:30 is like the perfect spot, though. Granted, some people prefer night, but I think with 2:30, it's like it's early enough in the day where the excitement, the anticipation, it's not having to sit around and wait all day. And when you get done with the game, obviously we get to react to it, but also there's more football being played. You can kind of watch and kind of wind down a little bit and just enjoy a college football Saturday a little bit. So, 2:30 on ABC. Then you've also got Syracuse at Tennessee. It's going to be at 11. That's not overly shocking. LSU Clemson is going to be the night game at 6:30. I guess that was kind of first choice there, which is understandable given where Florida State is. That this is really a Florida State problem as far as the time. And then South Carolina, Virginia Tech is going to be at 2 p.m. on Sunday. So that would give us a good Sunday game to look forward to. But Alabama playing Florida State. Would you say that you prefer 2:30 kicks compared to 6:30 or 7? Obviously, I think everybody prefers it to like an 8 p.m. kick. But, even some of those primetime 6:37, what's your preference, Mick?
Well, we do the post-game show on here, and that, you and I both are on there. So it's like the earlier, the better, just because it gets us, out there to talk to everyone. The 11 a.m. ones are probably the worst ones, but, and it's just because of the pregame show. You do your pregame show comes on before on radio around the state. and it comes on before Crimson Tide Sports Network. So then like 11 a.m., it's a 6 a.m. game, you know? So I'm just telling you how the math works for me. And then you do the post-game show, which is great when it's 11, because then you're right on there. You get it out of the way. 2:30, 3:30, those are the best spots for both pre and post-game show. Whether you're watching the Bama Tailgate show or listening to it, or then the post-game show comes on, it's like, it's a good window. You can get out of the way of the second half of the big games that come on afterwards, but you get a chance to recap it. And then just for the viewing pleasure of it, I can't stand the real late night games, because I'm tired. I mean, forget about even working the shows. It's just a matter of, just a late night, so I don't know. I guess for young fans, they probably like the night games. You make a lot of noise there, but 2, 3:30, that neighborhood, I'm fine with that. I give that 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I'm a 2:30 guy as well. I go to bed early nowadays. In my older age, hits about 8:30. I wake up at like 5, so typically like to get in the bed and get a few hours of sleep. Sometimes I'm not able to do that, but yeah, anytime with the way our post game shows go, especially if it's a loss, you're looking at, when it's a 8 p.m. kick, you're looking at 2, 3 before we're getting to bed, bare minimum. And a lot of fans can relate too, because they're traveling and everything. It's not just us, but yeah, I think 2:30 is a good time. I think it's going to be kind of an opportunity for Alabama to get a lot of eyeballs on it, because you do have, Notre Dame and Miami. You have Clemson and LSU. Both those two are going to be night games. So getting Alabama, Florida State, that should get a lot of national attention, Mick.
Yeah, some pretty good games to start out that first week too, and that's exciting. Because it gives you things to look forward to start the season.
Yeah, it really does. And that's kind of, in recent years, just like Western Kentucky, it's more of just seeing the product. Like, what are you going to see in year one under Kalen DeBoer? Utah State was another one where it's like, it's more of just seeing stuff come together, and you've been anticipating and wondering how much are guys going to play, what's it going to look like as far as the starting lineup. Like, you get a lot of those questions answered, but even against the Western Kentuckys and the Utah States and teams like that, you're going to work into your rotation quite a bit. So even exiting that first game, in my opinion, you don't have as much information as what it's actually going to look like against a quality opponent. Against Florida State, it could be something similar. It is possible that Florida State continues to be as bad as they were last year, and Alabama beats the brakes off of them, as someone in the comments, Kevin, pointed out. And then you end up working into the rotation anyways, even against an opponent like that, or it could end up being a little bit closer than we all think. And then you're looking at a situation where you get a very good idea of what the rotation looks like. Typically on the road, coaching staffs, they're going to kind of condense the rotation a little bit. So when things are very meaningful, you'll get an idea of the roster a lot better when you have a quality opponent in week 1.
Yeah, well, that's true. And how exciting was it playing at Wisconsin last year? They're going to be the 3rd game of the season. But the College Football Playoff Committee did not reward Alabama for playing tough games, and that's the bugaboo right now. I got a feeling that just the threat of the NCAA being dissolved and the super conference happening with the Big Ten and the SEC is probably going to change some of that BS this year. But we'll see. Bama's got a tough schedule, and they didn't have to do this to themselves. We thought that the direction of college football was one in which you would be rewarded for that. It wasn't the case, and and we'll kind of see how things work, but a really, really tough schedule this year. And the first 4 games are, when you got to play at Florida State, Wisconsin, at Georgia in those games, that's tough. And then, Louisiana Monroe's a sneaky team too. Guys, we're brought to you by Pearl River Resort. I want to tell you that. Over in Philadelphia, Mississippi, the Azaleas, the Oaks, 2 amazing golf courses at Dancing Rabbit. Jay Coker and I are going to be there soon. So swing down and see us. We got to get Clint out there at some point, but it's great. Table games and slots at Golden Moon and Silver Star Casino, the Timeout Sports Lounge, sauna, the spa, you got the water park, all that there, and some great concerts as well. What do you think the game time affects game planning and heat readiness? I know it's hot in T-Town. The Florida humidity ain't no joke. I'll tell you this, Clint. I thought it was interesting that the board changed from afternoon practices to morning practices. I think some of the players don't like that, former players, because going through that heat kind of helped them prepare to be a little bit tougher. Although it's hot in the morning too, it's just not as hot. But you know what, he likes to get things out of the way, and you know I can understand that too. What do you think?
That's an interesting point, given the question from Casey. Because it is interesting when you are kicking off at 2:30. That is going to affect things as far as the weather and the heat and the humidity and all that stuff. Like, you're going to be dealing with it morning, noon, or night in Florida in late August, early September, but you are putting it at the hottest time of day, or I guess it's not the hottest, but around that time where it's still going to be pretty hot. So that's going to be something that Alabama is going to need to prepare for. And your point about the early morning stuff, that is also a good point. Like, I understand wanting to get it knocked out. That makes a lot of sense. But when you look at it from the perspective of heat and having your players in the best condition, especially when your opening game is against an offense that we think is going to be pretty high octane, it's going to operate at a very quick pace. It's going to be difficult. When you talk about the heat and everything else that you're going to be dealing with down there, that actually is a really good point. I'll be curious to see what that ends up looking like, or if they adjust things, or how they adjust things to have players prepared. But that is one benefit of having the practices in the afternoons, or, early afternoons, just after lunch, 2, 3, whenever specifically it was. But, I think it also has benefits as well.
Yep. Let's go back to the mailbag again. You love the mailbag, and this is a great time of year for mailbag questions. And guys, as you hang out with us as well, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. That's a great way of saying roll tide on the show today, this live show on a Tuesday. What you got for us, Clint?
Yeah, so I had a couple of questions that I wanted to talk about. I thought they were great. One of them came from another anonymous person who didn't want to be named, and then the other one came from someone on a YouTube comment after yesterday's video. So definitely going to get to both of those. But the first one was from the anonymous, and it says, "I noticed you and Mick have been talking a lot about Jaylen Mbakwe recently. I know he's got talent in front of him, but I have a hard time seeing a scenario where he doesn't get significant playing time. In fact, I still believe he's got a chance to be the next Travis Hunter and get meaningful reps on both offense and defense. What do you think? Is it still possible that he plays both ways, or is he just strictly locked into the offensive side of the football?"
I think I'm not hearing anything. I'm not hearing anything about him, and that's bad. That's not a good thing. It's not like when you're an umpire in baseball. The silence is almost deafening. I'll tell you guys that right now. And I like him, but I love Mbakwe. I'm glad he was, an Alabama guy. I'm glad he didn't go to Ole Miss. I didn't like the way that whole thing went down with the NIL and the Lane Kiffin. I understand that's part of the business, but he got taken care of, and met him. He's a great guy. But when you don't hear a lot about people, and there's, a pretty deep wide receiver room, and he was playing on defense, but he's not doing that anymore. It's concerning. I think for him, he should be trying to play both ways, because he's got the talent to do that.
I've been pretty vocal about how I feel about him right now. I think he's going to be a guy who's going to be a hell of a receiver for Alabama. I think he's got a lot of talent, a lot of athleticism, one of the premier athletes on the roster or in college football in general. But when you look at what else Alabama has as far as the established three at the top of the wide receiver depth chart, we talk about Rico Scott. It's been pretty clear that he's kind of been that guy where if someone misses, he's sliding in with the first team in their stead, so that's why I've kind of viewed him as a wide receiver 4. We also talk about Latsir Brooks. What role is he going to play? Cole Adams, Jalen Hill's a guy who's coming off of injury. Really don't know what he's going to look like exactly, but you have to feel like based off of reports and how he kind of looked on A-Day, that he's clearly trending in the right direction to be a contributor. And with where he was trending, after his freshman season, he was going to be a big part of Alabama's wide receiver room last year. But with Mbakwe, the thing about him, he's going to take a little bit of time at receiver.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the question at defensive back, had he remained there, would Alabama have pursued Cam Calhoun? Like, if you already had Dijon Lee, you had your two starters coming back, you had Jaylen Mbakwe, who had gotten significant playing time, kind of being that cornerback 3 along with Deshaun Jones. Like, would they have even pursued a guy like Cam Calhoun? I have no idea. But it almost feels like if they would have pursued Cam Calhoun with what else you had, it's almost like I don't know for sure, even though I feel pretty confident he would have continued to be at or near the top of the depth chart. But with what Dijon Lee was doing this spring and what, how the coaching staff feels about Cam Calhoun, it's no guarantee that he would have been cornerback 3 and set up for significant playing time on defense either. So I think it's almost kind of unfair to say, he made a terrible mistake moving to the offensive side, because it could have been a situation where it was the same either way, even though I think he was already established at corner. So it would have to be other guys taking it from him rather than him trying to take it from other guys at receiver. That's a difference. But, as far as playing both ways, I'm just not seeing it. I've heard nothing to suggest that he's going to play both ways. He strictly spent, all of the bowl practices wide receiver, getting acclimated. Part of that was through necessity because they were so short at that position, but also, it was because that was where things were trending all during the spring. I didn't hear about him playing defensive back and stuff. And it's not like you can just take that away from him. Like, he's an established veteran at corner, so you can go let him learn receiver and he's going to be just fine on that side of the football. I think it's a situation where he needed continued development on that side as well, if you were planning to do that with him. So the fact that we've heard nothing about that tells me he's going to probably be a receiver only, which is fine. I think if Alabama was desperate, like something catastrophic happened and they lost a bunch of scholarship players at corner, I think it's possible that he could be an emergency guy who flipped over. And, you would have to feel good about, comparative to a guy who's never played the position or hasn't played it since high school or whatever. But I think other than that, I think he's strictly going to be a receiver. I think he's going to take some time. I do think he's going to be a small part of Alabama's plans. And maybe that increases over the course of the season. But what Casey's saying, as far as, he's crazy, but he's hearing a lot more about Latsier Brooks than he is Jaylen Mbakwe. That's the same for me. I've heard a lot about Rico, heard a lot about Latsier. Didn't hear much about Bach and didn't hear much about Cole Adams. So I'll be curious to see what that looks like come the fall. But I understand that was kind of the direction we were going to take this as far as the show. It's obviously in the thumbnail. It's one of the first topics that we're addressing. I just thought it was an interesting question because he's not the only person asking. So, this is a question that a lot of Alabama fans still have with Bach. And while he is a premier athlete, and I think that if you wanted him to, he could probably eventually be pretty productive at both. Is he going to be one of the best wide receivers in college football while simultaneously being one of the best cornerbacks in college football? No, I don't think that would be the case. I think bare minimum at one of those two spots, he would be good, not great. Travis Hunter was a unicorn. And so everybody trying to figure out who the next unicorn is going to be, it's not a unicorn if they come around every year. So,
yeah. And remember, Travis Hunter was also the number 1 player in the country. And had a coach that did that in the NFL. I saw him do it, Coach Prime. So, but yeah, a little concerning with where Bach is. A little concerning.
I'm not as concerned as you, Mick. Now, granted, I'm not saying that there's no reason for concern. I think I just had more realistic expectations for that move. A lot of people thought he was playing last year. He was trending as a true freshman. Why in the world would you switch positions and now you're not in that position anymore? Once again, I'm not saying he wouldn't have been in that position had he remained at corner, but I still say that would be not a guarantee, and it would be through no fault of Jaylen Mbakwe, by the way. I think it would be Dijon Lee's turning out to be one of those players where it's like, you're not talking about him benching one of your 2 starters who are both top 10 players on your roster, and Damani Jackson and Xavier Brown, but we are talking about like I mean, if they had any other situation other than that, it is possible that Dijon Lee would just uproot one of those guys as the starter. Cam Calhoun, it's no reflection of him. If he's quarterback 4, it's not the coaching staff doesn't like him. It's not that he's not acclimating to the SEC or Alabama. It is that Dijon Lee has been that good. Dijon Lee was going to be Dijon Lee regardless of Jaylen Mbakwe was in that room. So, it's just I understood when he made the switch, it hit the reset button on his development. And so I'm viewing this in a lot of ways like his freshman season as a receiver after being a multifaceted athlete on the high school level. It's going to take him a little bit of time, but the coaching staff likes what he brings to the table. And as he masters that position, I think he'll slowly start to make a bigger and bigger impact. And you could end up losing some receivers after this year. Jimmer Bernard's probably going to be gone. He is going to be gone. Isaiah Horton could be a one and done depending on how successful he is. Like there could be opportunities for him to climb the depth chart come next season. But, hopefully my plan, my projected plan for him, if I was Alabama, maybe get him some scripted touches, some jets, things like that. Maybe get him a little bit of action at receiver, mostly let him be a dynamic return player for you. Like typically in the past, Alabama has went to some of its star players to be the return guys or play special teams because it was the best option they had. They wanted that dynamic presence at those positions, and so they were willing to take risk with their starters. Alabama's in a unique position right now where you can put a premier dynamic athlete as a return man who brings a lot of those same qualities that those guys in the past would, but he's not one of your starters or even expected to be a major contributor. So you get the best of both worlds. Like if he ends up getting hurt, that's not good. That's never good. But it's not like you're going to see sacrifices being made both on special teams and on offense if that happens, like it would if it was Ron Williams. Like not only does that change special teams for you if he got hurt, but it also completely changes what you are on offense. Jaylen Mbakwe is your return guy and he goes down. You're going to see some changes, probably as at the return position and on special teams, but offense is not going to be too affected. Like it's a good situation to be in. So I like what he could potentially be, but it's just going to take him a little bit of time.
Great to see all you guys that are hanging out with us today, including our buddy Iceman. Ice Baby, what's up, man? Good to see you today. Casey, Star Ghost 9, Kevin, Tyder's back in Bama, and he said that he didn't think he was a star on defense. How's he going to be a star on both sides of the ball? I think if you're a true freshman and you go out and play and you don't just get beaten down, I mean, that tells you something right there. He should have just stuck on defense instead of listening to people that told him that he needed to go to the wide receiver position. Because he was out there learning and getting better and holding his own, and now he's buried. At least that's what I think. And then we'll see what happens. I mean, still a long way to go, but there definitely isn't any buzz on him right now. And there was a lot of buzz going into that, into the season last year. And then up until he came back to Alabama, got all that money in that NIL. And, so anyway, all right, back to the mailbag. What you got?
All right. So college football, Casey, yesterday on YouTube responded to our video with this question. And so, of course, we're going to address it. I thought it was a good question. They asked, do you think more consistent quarterback play, even if you sacrifice the playmaking ability of Milroe, is going to help the running game open up? I think Jam Miller and Richard Young are poised to have better seasons, even if they're not 1,000-yard rushers.
Now you start this one out.
Yes, I do think more consistent quarterback play will certainly help. I thought it was interesting last year. If you look at the numbers, you would think, okay, Alabama had a dynamic runner at the quarterback position in Jalen Milroe. So naturally, teams were going to stack the box against him. And that happened at times. But when you go look at the 6-man boxes that Alabama dealt with last year, it was actually a really high percentage, way higher than the national average. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, Milroe's vertical ability. Like if you want to bring more guys in the box, it gives vertical opportunities down the field. If you run the split safety looks, if you feel confident in your ability to stop Alabama's run game, particularly at quarterback, because the traditional run game wasn't all that effective, then, if you could do that with playing too high, then you really take away a lot of Alabama's ability to push the ball vertically, which we saw. That was a huge problem. I don't think Alabama made defenses pay for responding with wider boxes based off in this formation. It's flexing the tight end out. Now you've got 4 wide out there. You've only got 5 guys, on the offensive line and a running back there. Like naturally, when you're doing formations like that, that's gonna lighten the box a little bit. But I just think that typically Alabama didn't do a good enough job of capitalizing on some of the looks they were being given based off of not only what Milroe did well, but also what the formation presents. And another aspect of that is while teams were giving those looks, they were also anticipating, okay, very quickly we're going to know, is this a vertical shot or is it going to be a run? So it was very quickly like, hey, we've got to be able to come downhill with some authority. We got to anticipate that a little bit. It was just an interesting dynamic to the offense that really made it, if you had the right personnel on defense, you could make Alabama's life miserable on offense. We saw that against Oklahoma, against really not Vanderbilt. I would say second half against Georgia, they certainly figured some things out. There were certain teams that really gave Alabama trouble. If you can get more consistent quarterback play based off of the formations and the fact that they're going to spread you out, and there's more of, it's not just the vertical shots, it's more of attacking all 3 levels of the field, then that's going to take pressure off of your run game. And if the offensive line is improved like we think it's going to be improved, then that should present opportunities in your run game as far as the stable that you've got. So I think that will create a much more consistent overall product compared to what we saw last season.
Love that idea. All right. Well, what do you got going on Cover Crimson? Oh, you got a question. Yeah, throw that up there. Ty Simpson will be the best thing that happened to our defense. Staying on the field longer and field his position will help the defense tremendously. Look, if it could help the offensive line too, if he's able to kind of pick up the pace with the offense and not hold the ball too long.
Yeah, I've always talked about, you've got certain offenses, what makes them so dangerous. Like you look at 2019 LSU, or you look at 2022 Tennessee. They did it in different ways, but they could just attack you in so many ways. Like you had a quarterback that was capable of taking advantage of all 3 levels in the passing game. They had the vertical ability. They had the ability to execute a lot of your quick rhythmic passing game. They had the ability as far as their legs. They were dual threat where you had to take that into account. But then you had running backs, a diverse group of running backs like a Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who was not only a quality runner, but also a good pass catcher out of the backfield. Tennessee in 2022, they had a couple of guys who could do both. You had good offensive lines. Like it was just very difficult to contain everything that those styles of offenses could throw at you because you can't stop all of it. Like with Alabama this past season, it got to a point where it's like, okay, you got to take the deep ball into consideration. Even if Milroe has not been on and he kind of faltered a little bit as far as his execution on that side of things, he's still capable of being a very good vertical ball thrower. And then you got to take into account his legs. Outside of those 2 things, everything else was very manageable. The traditional run game wasn't all that great or consistent. The as far as being able to win in the short to intermediate parts of the field, even if the receivers did, which they weren't always great at it, then you have to worry about, can the quarterback get it to them? So it was very limiting, and you took a lot of pressure off of defenses. With Ty Simpson, he still brings that dual threat ability, but I also think he can do a lot more as far as your passing game to really help on that front. And then you've upgraded the wide receiver position, and you have a guy who's now going to be your primary tight end, if definitely going to be a starting tight end, if not your primary, who's more pass catch heavy in Josh Cuevas. He was tight end 3 last year. And then you've got what we think is going to be a more improved offensive line. You got a better play caller who's going to have a much better feel. It's like I think Alabama's offense is going to be very 2022 Tennessee, 2019 LSU in that sense where they can just attack you in a lot of different ways. Now, I think as far as the running back room, you got to have some guys emerge on that front to really become what I think they can. But I think with the offensive line and the way that things are going to be schemed up, I think that those opportunities are going to be there regardless. They just have to have guys that can take advantage. But it's going to be a fun offense to watch. I have no doubt about that.
Awesome. All right. Any other questions you want to get to before we wrap it up?
No, I think we're good. I appreciate all the contributions and stuff. Love the fact that we were able to go live today. Aren't able to always do that, but we love everybody hopping into the comments, into the live chat, and then if you've got a question and you're watching this on replay or whatever, or if we weren't able to get to your question, we'll try to go back through and we'll address it tomorrow. Like right now, this time of year, we'll talk about some of the newsy stuff like that kickoff time, like we did at the beginning. But we want you guys driving the content. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit repetitive. I apologize for that. There's not as much to react to right now. But we also, if someone missed a video and they have a similar question that was kind of addressed, I'll do as much as I can as far as expanding on that or making it a little bit different where people feel like they're getting more information out of it. But we'll try to address every question that we possibly can.
Yeah, don't forget too that you can follow us on all your podcasting sources, Spotify, Apple, all the places you get podcasts. You can always listen to the show on there. So and share with your friends. We ask you to download, share, we'll talk Alabama football with you every day, and and keep it going right up until the start of the season. And don't forget covercrimson.com. Right now you can join $25 off the annual subscription, $75 for a year. And this day and age, it's not that much. Clint gives you a whole bunch of great information over there.
Yeah, I just put up the defensive depth chart this morning, and I dove into it. I've told people I really try to dive in, go back. I pay attention. Like you got to know where your free and strong safeties are lining up on the field. Obviously the strong safety, the rover, as it's been called in the past under Kane Womack, it's going to be playing to the boundary side. It's going to be playing closer to the line of scrimmage. Your free safety is typically going to be that single high safety in a lot of those looks or situations. It's like I was paying attention and taking note where guys specifically were lining up, whether it be those, between those two positions. So I put a lot of effort towards giving people as accurate of depth chart projections as I possibly can. Doesn't mean I'll be right. I'm sure there will be some things that I was wrong about last year. I learned my lesson through that Mike and Stinger look, where it's like they really want, typically your weak side linebacker is going to be your space player because the runs are going to the strong side. And so they're more of a cleanup player. But within this new era of college football, now you typically want your Mike to be more of your space player because of all the passing and the fact they're going to be playing to the field sides. There's more space to cover. So it's like that's something I didn't take into account with last year's projections. Had Deontay Lawson and Jahad Campbell flipped, but I learned from that mistake. And so I really try to give people as accurate of a prediction as possible. So just got those up. If you haven't already, go check them out. And we will be starting our roster rankings here pretty soon.
Awesome. Got a new partner we're excited to bring on here soon. So get ready for that. Little hint, got my NWO shirt. You're going, what does that have anything to do? You'll find out. We'll be talking about that. But we're really glad to be presented by Pearl River Resort over in Philadelphia, Mississippi. The Azaleas, the Oaks, the Dancing Rabbit Golf Course, 2 amazing courses that you can play. Guys, we'll talk to you later. Roll Tide.
Resort.
All right, man, I got to balance my